Hello, welcome to the Polyglot Files. My name is Michael and today we're doing another episode of Languages of the World! Today's country is one that is near and dear to my heart, and it is none other than Canada, my home country. Now I know what you're thinking. Canada's full of polar bears and Tim Hortons and enough maple syrup to kill a snowshoeing moose drunk off Molson Canadian, eh? But for the average Canadian, life is not how the rest of the world expects it to be for us. I've never even seen a moose before. Like, in the flesh. We live a fairly normal, I dare say, American lifestyle, but Canada's embrace of multiculturalism does give us a pretty interesting linguistic landscape. Due to the Official Languages Act of 1969, both English and French are recognized official languages of Canada. Additionally, there are 65 Indigenous, or what are known as Aboriginal languages, and combined with immigrant and minority languages, it is estimated that 20% of the Canadian population speaks another language natively that is not English or French. But before we delve into that interesting statistic, let's look at Canada's official languages. According to official 2011 census data, 21.4 million Canadians speak English natively and 6.8 million Canadians speak French natively. In fact, the two official languages share quite a similar history in Canada. For starters, modern-day Canada was first colonized by the French in 1534. The colony, then called New France, spanned a large portion of North America, going all the way from modern-day Newfoundland south to Louisiana. The British, however, had also established territorial claims in North America, most notably the 13 colonies that would go on to become the United States of America. Thus began a long period of war between the French and the English, most of which I will skip over for the interest of time, but the important takeaway here is that all this fighting culminated in what was known as the 7 Years' War. The British beat the French, and the French gave up majority of their land in North America in what was known as the Treaty of Paris in 1763. Today, most French speakers in Canada live in the province of Quebec, and relations between the English and the French are generally pretty good. Generally. Don't hurt me. In the case of English, while there are some differences in the English spoken here in Canada, Canadian English remains fairly mutually intelligible with all other forms of English. Which you could probably already tell because I'm speaking Canadian English right now. However, one of those notable differences in Canadian English is what is known as Canadian raising. In fact, this is a phenomenon that is responsible for Canadians saying out and about. I know, it's hilarious, right? We sound like moose. In short, Canadian raising affects these two diphthongs before voices consonants, effectively raising their pronunciation in the mouth. For example, let's look at these two words. Normally, myself and other Canadians would say cloud with an ow sound, but we would say clout with almost an oat sound. That distinction doesn't appear in American English, where these words would be pronounced like cloud and clout. 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 I don't know, it just seems like it's too much work to say clout. Canadian raising also affects other ow sounds, such as house and scout, and also words with an I sound, such as height and light and night. I was out of the house at night, so I turned on the light. Now obviously, I'm exaggerating the accent a little bit so that you can really hear it, but the quality of the accent itself also changes depending on where you are in Canada. For those of you who have visited Canada, you may not have noticed this accent at all, especially if you only visited a major city like Toronto or Vancouver. And that seems to be because the accent is a lot more pronounced in small towns or in rural areas, but that's just my observation. If you've ever visited Canada, let me know if you notice the accent in the comments below. Do I even have an accent when I speak? In addition to Canadian raising, there is also distinct Canadian vocabulary. For example, we love to use the word a, as in, this is a great video, eh? In short, there are actually rules for how to use a, and it has been studied linguistically. And chances are, if you're not a Canadian and you're trying to use the word a, you're probably not using it correctly. How are you doing today, eh? Further, Canadians sit on our Chesterfields while we change the TV channel with our converters. We get water from a tap, drink pop, and use serviettes to wipe our mouths when we're eating. Don't be afraid if we ask you for an extra loonie or toonie when we're trying to buy a 2-4 or a Mickey from the liquor store. And while we're out buying poutines, a double-double, and ketchup chips, don't forget your toucan bunny hug, eh? It's -18 with the wind chill. Jesus, Murphy. Like English, Canadian French is also its own distinct dialect of French. In terms of pronunciation, a French speaker from Paris might say petite, while a French Canadian speaker might say peut-être. A Parisian might say alcoolique, while a French Canadian might say alcoolique. A Parisian would say secondaire, while a French Canadian would say secondaire. Further, a French Canadian speaker would say mardi, while a Parisian would say mardi. Canadian French also has some of its own vocabulary words. For example, they might use the verb magasiner instead of faire des courses to mean to go shopping. They might use char instead of voiture to mean car. Also, there are some pretty odd French-Canadian swear words that really aren't offensive in any other dialects of French. Tabarnak, sacre bleu, Galice. Those are legit swear words, and they actually trace themselves back to the old Catholic French Canadians who first came to Canada. In addition to official languages, Canada also has 65 Indigenous or Aboriginal languages. According to the 2011 census, only about 213,000 people speak an Aboriginal language as their home language. Of those, Cree, Inuktitut, and Ojibwe are the most spoken. Cree is spoken by about 117,000 people, and it is one of the most geographically widespread Aboriginal languages in Canada. It has many dialects in a variable word order. Further, Cree uses a syllabary as a writing system, meaning that written symbols represent a syllable rather than individual consonant or vowel sounds. Inuktitut also uses a syllabary as a writing system. It is spoken by about 34,000 speakers, mostly in the northern regions of Canada, and it is an Eskimo language. Like other Eskimo languages, Inuktitut is agglutinative, meaning it uses morphemes added to roots to express entire thoughts or entire sentences. Ojibwe comes in as the third most spoken Aboriginal language in Canada, with just over 32,000 native speakers, but it is not a Canada-specific language. There are an estimated additional 70,000 Ojibwe speakers in the United States. Ojibwe is an Algonquin language, meaning it is related to Cree, and like Cree, Ojibwe has a variable word order. Of course, there are many other Aboriginal languages that are also spoken in Canada, many of which are endangered. Interestingly, one of the most endangered languages in Canada is called Inuyuk, and not only is it an indigenous sign language, but it is also a language isolate. While some object to its existence, there are an estimated 47 speakers of Inuyuk in Canada, all of which live in the remote communities of Nunavut. Unfortunately, very little is known about Inuyuk, and with its small number of speakers, the opportunity to learn more about it is dwindling. Lastly, what video about the languages of Canada would be complete without talking about immigrant or minority languages? Canada is a very welcoming and multicultural place, and a lot of Canadians see no problem with immigration. Again, don't hurt me. That said, it is estimated that as many as 6 million Canadians speak a language at home that is not English, French, or an Aboriginal language. Common languages include Punjabi, Mandarin, Cantonese, Greek, Italian, Portuguese, Arabic, Urdu, Russian, Polish, and the list goes on and on and on. So in conclusion, Canada's great. That's my final thought. This has been another episode of Languages of the World! Before I go, I just wanted to give a big thank you and do a shout out to Ian Martin. He produced music in today's video. Check him out on Facebook, Twitter, and Bandcamp. I will put all of his links in the description box below. And as usual, thank you for watching the Polyglot Files. I will see you next time. Bye!